If you're a risk taker, when an opportunity presents itself, I think you leap. And you figure two things. One, there's going to be a branch that I can hold on to on the way down.
Yeah.
And two, the colleagues that you meet along the way are going to be there. They're going to be there to teach you, to correct you, and to partner with you. And if you're willing to do that, does it work 100% of the time? Of course not. But in my experience, 98% of the time, the richness that you get from that is remarkable.
Who says tech can't be human?
What's going on, Hacker Valley fam? Welcome back to the show. We are here at InfoSec Nashville 2024, hosted by ISSA Middle Tennessee. With me, I have Edna Conway, founder and CEO of EMC Advisors. Welcome to the podcast, Edna.
Delighted to be here with you.
Glad that you're here. I saw you on stage just a few minutes ago. It was you and Kirsten speaking. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to have you on the podcast. So let's go ahead and share to the audience, what was the keynote about?
So the keynote was really about something that really matched the theme here today, right? And the theme is thinking about this crossroad and the juxtaposition of innovation and tradition. So I wanted to highlight what we need to do to start as security practitioners to speak the language of business, which is the language of risk. And then I identified some intriguing top of mind risks for me that we all need to be aware of. And then we talked a little bit about some of the intriguing legislation that's out there. And we closed with something that was special because Kirsten knows me very well, which was my dreams for the future.
We got to touch on at least a few of those things. I think it's important for the audience to know the great run that you've had at your career so far. I got a chance to do some research of my own. Also, we had a chance to speak right before we hit record. And I think it's impressive when someone can commit to one industry for quite some time. You spent some time at Cisco, some time at Microsoft. Now you're, doing your own thing. So I got to ask, what's been some of your favorite moments, throughout this great run that you've had in security?
I think I started off as a prosecutor for homicides when I first got out of law school, and have always thought that safety and security is important. And then as an intellectual property attorney, there's a theme there, which is how do you respect intellectual property? How do you respect the human? How do we create innovative environments that allow us to get the best out of humans, use the continued digital capabilities that we have, but protect what we need to protect in the right ways? That's the theme. But it's been a long and bizarre journey.
So I said committed to one career field, and then here we go. We find out that you were a prosecutor. How does one pivot from being a prosecutor to cybersecurity? Like, is there even a clean jump from that field to this?
I don't know that there's clean jumps to anything. I think life is about the journey. And to be honest with you, if you're a risk taker, when an opportunity presents itself, I think you leap. And you figure two things. One, there's going to be a branch that I can hold on to on the way down.
Yeah.
And two, the colleagues that you meet along the way are going to be there. They're going to be there to teach you, to correct you, and to partner with you. And if you're willing to do that, does it work 100% of the time? Of course not. But in my experience, 98% of the time, the richness that you get from that is remarkable. And you just need to shake yourself up. Sticking in one route is just not great. So security is a theme, but practicing law for 20 years and focusing on legal matters and talking about supply chain operations, and I had all of the resilience and environmental sustainability and trade and export control. They all blend together into one thing. How do we drive business and government services to the best capability that delivers what we need today and works on innovating for what we're going to need tomorrow?
Right. I could see some of the parallels now that I've taken a second to think about it between being a prosecutor and being a security practitioner. One of the most informed people that I've met that knew a lot about security was a chess grandmaster. He knew a lot about defensive strategy. And I would imagine it's the same for coming from a law background. You know positioning, you know the things that are going to keep you safe from at least like a legal perspective. And I'm sure a lot of that can be translated into technology.
I think that's a fair statement. I think, we often forget about the human element. Mm-hmm. Technology is not here for any other reason than to serve us, the humans, not the other way around. And somewhere in the mystery of the excitement about the new and shall we say, yet completely unknown, we've lost a reminder about that. And I always like to say that's something we ought to be thinking about comprehensively at all times.
I'm glad that you brought that up, the human element, and doubling down on that, because in some ways, I think we've doubled down in some capacity with AI. And in other ways, it seems like AI is taking us out of the human element because we're going to things like ChatGPT for quick answers. And some people are even uploading contracts and sensitive information. So I think it's a value add. But I wonder, though, how AI and these large language models are going to affect how we approach each other. I'm sure you've seen a lot looking at how companies are building AI systems and seeing if they are actually accurate and fair. I would love to hear, what has been your experience with AI and LLMs so far?
So we've had AI for quite some time, right? We've been thinking about machine learning for ages, in all honesty. And so people need to think back to, when Alexa first came out, or when you asked Siri something on your iPhone, or Cortana if you're a Microsoft user. And so I think what really happened was that speaks the language of digital communication. Humans don't speak zeros and ones. Humans speak natural language. So the advent of generative AI saw an uptick in usability in those who are completely unschooled on security.
Yes.
Those who are experts on it, and every aspect of human capability, from the 8-year-old in 3rd grade who's using it to do their math homework, which is not a great thing, to folks who are actually writing resumes utilizing it. Right? It's so intriguing to see what people will do. So for me, if we look just at large language models, and I spoke a little bit about this as one of the 3 sort of intriguing areas that we should be focused on, is how do we build accuracy and integrity, 2 very important words, into large language models. Mm-hmm. And look, the cat's already out of the bag, but we haven't missed the window to do something intriguing.
Yeah.
But we need to do it. Remember that supply chain background. I think about everything in terms of either a life cycle and the ecosystem. The life cycle is the course and trajectory, and the ecosystem is the who. Who is going to be involved in that trajectory? So first you've got ingestion, and then you've got the analysis, and then you've got the output. And I'm a big advocate of saying, there are some things we can do algorithmically. Some things are not algorithmically feasible, right? And I'll give you an example. Let's use a supply chain example, right? Because a lot of people are using LLMs in a very intriguing way, which is they think it's a predictive risk tool. It's an analysis tool. Predictive risk has to come from other ways to analyze information. And, what I said this morning is a really important statement, which is natural language LLM is, in fact, an English major. It captures English, consolidates it. It is not a math major. Predictive analysis requires both.
Yeah.
So I'm a manufacturer because we were talking earlier, and next week we're going to be in Chicago talking to a big manufacturing group. And I produce something and let's put it in a rainforest in Malaysia.
Mm-hmm.
And that particular third party, so member of the ecosystem, who's very important to me, is sitting right in the middle of an area where it's been raining for, pick a number, 21 days. Okay. What does that mean? It's been raining for 21 days. Do you want to think about that or not? Well, I probably do. And maybe I'm going to use an LLM. But some of the data that went into the LLM came from NOAA, highly reputable source of information. Some of the data comes from what you always need, feet on the street. At my house, for example, we look at the news every morning and say, oh, that's what they said the weather is. And then we use what we call the real-time weather discernment technique.
Mm-hmm.
Open the door, walk out of the front step and see what it looks like outside, right? So you always want those feet in the location. And so we got information from, let's say, the plant manager. The plant manager is getting information from his brother-in-law, who happens to have a tin can on the back of his deck and is measuring the rainfall, but forgot that there's an evaporation factor, and also the dog has knocked it over twice. Two different sets of likelihood of accuracy and integrity.
Yes.
So the analysis comes out in a way that has already a flaw factor on accuracy because of that. So if we capture that at the outset, we adjust for it in the analysis. And then at the end, when we look at the output, we say, okay, what does this really tell us? Because the reason why you're asking that question is, do I need to move production? And when should I move production?
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen folks use Monte Carlo simulations beautifully for that, but Monte Carlo simulations are not the power that we can get in terms of harvesting information swiftly and doing compute analysis, right, that we have with this new technology. So the end of all of that, Jabber, is LLMs have great potential. I'm excited about them. Where I'm seeing them used today is in 3 areas effectively, and it's pretty simple areas. Mm-hmm. Mathematical finance work, procurement, and procurement at simple levels, not complex contract negotiation. That still takes humans. And also in anomaly detection, particularly in a SOC, let's say, right? Where there's symmetry, similarity, data compilation helps you get to something faster that you can look at and then have a human involved.
Right.
If they'd asked me, I wouldn't have named it artificial intelligence. I would have called it enhanced intelligence.
Enhanced intelligence.
Yes.
With the word intelligence, it still sounds like it's coming from a living being. I think that's where a lot of people have a little bit of friction, because is it really intelligence or is it powerful compute?
It's a little bit of both. One could argue that it offers enhancement to the only intelligence that I know of, which is in the carbon-based units that live on this planet, us.
Yeah.
And listen, I'm a big fan of we're not the only intelligent ones, right? All you need to do, I don't know if you have a pet, but I have a dog. And our theory in our house is that the aliens have actually invaded long ago, and they looked at the planet and they figured out that they could actually come here and have us feed them, take care of them, brush them, love them, let them
They're living a good life, right?
on our beds, on our sheets. You know, my dog is particularly fond of, chicken parmesan.
Yeah.
It's a good life. And so the aliens are here with us, but we always forget that there are sentient beings that are not human as well. But at the end of the day, that's where intelligence comes from. The digital environment enables our tools and our capabilities as humanity to enhance that.
I'm all for calling it intelligence, because I look at intelligence as the ability to solve problems that you don't have all the context on. You have some of the context maybe, but you're able to work your way through a problem. Doesn't mean you have the right solution, but you can work your way through it. And when I look at AI, I think about all the ways that I could use it. As a business owner, I use it to transcribe my meetings and then to give me some coaching. How did I do? Should I ask to close the deal sooner? Should I ask this guest this specific question on the podcast? Or is that a no-no because they had a reaction during our scoping call? So I use it in a lot of different ways to assess language specifically. And I've been asking a lot of security leaders, in what way would you like to leverage AI, specifically generative AI, in cybersecurity? So like if you were to pick one or two use cases, which ones would you look at first?
Yeah, I'd look at anomaly detection first, to be honest with you, because we don't have the capacity to see the massive amounts of data that can be stored and computed.
Yeah.
And so we have this wonderful convergence in the time in which we find ourselves, right? I've lived long enough that we didn't have the compute capacity. We didn't have the storage capacity. There were a lot of things we didn't have. And now we have that. So leveraging that to allow us to make informed experiential decisions is something that adds tremendous value. And even as you just think about managed detection and response, right?
It's a lot.
Some of the MDR folks are leveraging some AI capabilities in what they offer as a managed SOC or in what they look at from a vulnerability detection. Are they doing that without humans looking at it? Absolutely not.
Right.
But we know in this arena, a combination of dwell time and persistence are two things we worry about. Anything that can help us get you out of our system or make our heads go, that hasn't happened. Let's go see what that's all about before its blast radius has expanded to something that is cataclysmic.
Mm-hmm.
Those are beautiful things in our industry.
I got to pause the interview for a second to ask you, our listeners, a question. Are you a professional in the Middle Tennessee area? If you are, you got to join the Middle Tennessee ISSA chapter. This chapter is the region's leading community for IT security experts that are dedicated to growing their skills, managing risk, and protecting critical infrastructure. By joining the Middle Tennessee ISSA chapter, you can meet with like-minded security professionals every third Friday of the month for a free event in Nashville. One of my favorite things about these events is lunch is included. As a guest or a member attendee, you'll connect with other like-minded people in the InfoSec community, access exclusive events, and stay up to date on the latest in cybersecurity. The ISSA Middle Tennessee chapter is focused on advancing the information security profession through education, collaboration, and real-world solutions. They provide members with tools and resources that are going to lead to opportunities to expand your knowledge across the industry, because the industry is constantly changing. Plus, don't miss InfoSec Nashville 2025 on September 22nd and 23rd. It's a phenomenal event that's bringing over 700 professionals for 2 days of speaking, networking, and hands-on learning. If you want to join the ISSA Middle Tennessee community, visit issamidtn.org today. A special thank you goes out to HPE, Aruba Networking, and Vectra for sponsoring their InfoSec Nashville 2024 event and ultimately sponsoring this episode that you're listening to right now. Without further ado, let's jump back into the interview. So I hear from a lot of security practitioners, they want to do things with generative AI. Like they would love to use things like ChatGPT and Claude, but they're not allowed. It's just a blanket no. And I think that maybe a blanket no could be a good look for some time, but at some point, you're going to need to introduce the things that are going to help your business be productive or your teams be productive. But I think you still have to keep the risk in mind. When you look at anomaly detection, that means you're feeding it a lot of information. What are the risks of using something like generative AI that you're keeping at the top of your mind when advising companies?
Accuracy validation. There's a reason why I spoke about what I spoke about, right? And I think blanket no's are not the best way to keep up with the changes that we need, right?
It's a good way to fall behind.
I think it's a great way to fall behind. And if you think about, I also talked this morning about when you speak the language of business, which is risk, you have to remember what business cares about. Mm-hmm. It doesn't care about how quickly you find a vulnerability or how quickly you mitigate it. What it cares about is three things, right? One, I want longevity. I want to be here and sustain myself and the mission that I'm trying to drive. Two, profitability. I need to be profitable in order to continue to do this. What risks are coming at me that I need to know about that will stymie what I'm doing today and what I'm working on to look to the future. And then the third risk is really, and focus area is, what are the new areas, and this gets back to the question you asked me, that I need to be able to embrace and determine how to effectively utilize, or quite frankly, invent myself and deliver, so that I can bring to my entire ecosystem. So think customers, partners, shareholders, all of those stakeholders. None of us do this in isolation, right? Where they need to be, because my mission is ultimately, no matter what you give, to serve them.
Right.
Period. And in that service, you can't say, gee, I'm a little scared about that. I don't think I'm going to use it. You could say, I'm going to do it in an enclave. I'm going to do it only with this group. I'm going to keep it in an R&D environment. I'm going to use, we all have them, right? I mean, we have war rooms where we game out scenarios. We have task forces. We have many names in business. I love linguistics. That's what it is.
Interesting that you said accuracy is the thing that you're most concerned about. Everyone else that I've spoken to, for the most part, has said their data being shared with the wrong person, or the AI company using their data for training. And I'm like, in some ways, that's a good thing, because they had to collect all this data to make sense out of it. It could be very detrimental if your data gets into the wrong hands. But as long as it doesn't, and there's good security practices that minimize that, then if the accuracy is so good and you're able to validate that, I feel like many risks are worth taking, assuming that you're just investigating and making sure that they have some of those security standards that you follow.
I think that's a fair statement, but I do think, let me make sure we're not misleading people into thinking that you can share
just
everything.
Trust AI.
Right? Because accuracy is the number one. You asked a specific question, is what do you worry about in the utilization of it?
Right.
We all need to protect our intellectual property. We always have. And especially, several years ago, in the US, we went to first to file, at least in the patent office, which we were first to use for many, many years as I was coming up in the legal system. That's a really big change, right? So the best trade secret, which is not patented, copyrighted anywhere that I'm aware of, that I always use as an example, is the recipe for Coca-Cola Classic, which when I grew up, there was only Coca-Cola. The Classic came later on as this concept of multi-flavors came out. No one has been able to duplicate it. Just think about that. That is amazing.
You can always taste the difference.
Yes, you can. I'd not recommend putting the recipe for Coke in AI, at least in an LLM.
Probably not.
Right? So again, it goes back to this, what are you really worried about? Well, don't use it is not an answer. Don't put these kinds of things in public LLMs is a good rule. Create your own enclave where you're utilizing it and training it with your custom information is a fabulous utilization that avoids that risk. Still using a public AI. Hard to do, but doable. And so, I think this morning I must have said the word enclave at least 5 times. I love enclaves. I know a little bit about your background. I know you love enclaves as well. And so these are the pieces in that puzzle that we have to put together to say we're going to utilize it in the right way, right? Go to the Wright brothers, right? They did some amazing things. They took some falls. They learned a few things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're in that trial phase right now. But look, I can't help but be excited about technology.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I grew up with, carbon paper and no computers and nuns hitting your knuckles with rulers. So if you think about the capacity of what I can do today, I'm sitting on a plane and I'm communicating with people. I'm developing things. I've set, times to go to an event with somebody before that door closes on a plane. I can be so productive. The downside is make sure you're being productive while giving yourself ample time to think.
Yes.
Because just moving using technology may not be the best forward trajectory.
Hmm. So we have to talk a little bit about ISSA. I love ISSA because they really put a lot of time and attention and effort into finding keynote speakers. I just keynoted at the Central Ohio ISSA. It was a great time. Coming here to the Middle Tennessee, I'm like, okay, there's levels to this game, especially for ISSA events. This is a spectacular event. What is your affiliation, and how did this keynote come to be?
Well, you know how anything comes to be in life, don't you? It's
Chance
some
encounters.
connection and
Yeah.
who you know and who you meet, and somebody says XYZ. So again, I'm going to say the human element. But I've been a member of ISSA for a really long time, and have been privileged to have people recognize me with certain things. And I think there is a sense of sometimes you just need to be with your own people, right?
Yeah.
And we have multiple groups of our own people. We're not really one-dimensional, we humans, are we? And so, sometimes I need to be with my supply chain people, and sometimes I need to be with my security people. But an organization that's designed to, one, share information and knowledge in a safe environment designed to uplift us all is something that I think is very special. And the security community is unique in that regard because we have areas where we are all trying to do the same thing and are not competitive. We share more than anybody else. I do a lot with, press, and I was at a Fortune talk, and it was so funny because the journalist who was spearheading the conversation, none of us knew one another who was going to be there. And we all walked in and people were like hugging and said, "Oh, it's so good to see you." She said, "I always forget in this community, you all know each other."
For sure.
And that's the gift, I think, that we give. And our community is getting larger. Our challenge will be to leverage things like ISSA to bring in the next generation and the generations after that of our community. So, for example, I invited, we spoke earlier about Cybersecurity,
Yeah.
which I've had the privilege of being on their board and also, being a mentor. And I invited one of my mentees to come from New England to come down today and hear this.
Oh, from New England. Okay.
Yes. And
They
so
made a trip.
she's here today. And I'm actually going to go out to dinner with her with my dear friend who is very close to this particular group in ISSA and very close to many of us at the senior level in security, Kirsten Davies. And so it's going to be an opportunity again to bring along somebody, do it with care. And for God's sake, do it with some love. Only we can add that. There's no love in artificial intelligence.
What I love about ISSA and Cybersecurity is there's actually a lot of overlap. Like you have Jonathan, who has invited us. He's the president of Middle Tennessee. But then I find out that Jimmy Sanders is now the president. I'm like, okay, wow. And he's got deep ties to Cybersecurity. He loves the mentorship program. I got started my career in cybersecurity because of a great mentor. His name was Marcus Carey. He's also from the Austin area. And when I was 16, I was working at a public access channel. I was a cameraman, going to nursing homes and basketball games. And on Sundays, we would allow people to come in and we would film whatever they wanted. Sometimes people would want their church service filmed, but this gentleman, Marcus, he walks in, he wants his cybersecurity, then it was called information assurance, little TV clip. We would edit it and air it. So he saw me reading a CCNA book and he thought it was, hey, it's cool that this young kid's reading CCNA. And I told him, I don't want to do this Cisco stuff. I'm a hacker. And I did not know where I was from in Maryland, literally 15 minutes down the road, there was an NSA. I didn't know what the NSA did at that time.
Wow.
So just through me kind of saying what I was and, manifesting it out loud a little bit to someone led to so many different things.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think, we talked briefly before this about, I have the privilege of sitting on a board of Gallaudet University, and I'm really aware of the fact that we have an untapped resource for cyber talent in the community of the deaf and hard of hearing. And I think groups like ISSA and I'm going to be bringing the president into something which is World 50's Security 50 group to talk to companies about what can we do together? And to your point, introducing them to, let's get NSA certified at the academic level. Let's think about how we can bring diversity of thought to the RSA conference now that it's not RSA and it's wholly owned in a different way.
Right.
So we have opportunities, but only if we make the effort to come together. The other thing that I love about this is I've never been to Nashville. I've traveled the world and I have never been to Nashville. So, to bring a girl who has lives in New Hampshire and says it with a New Hampshire accent to Tennessee to talk to experts who live and thrive in the growing cyber community here. And I'm right there with you. I'm old enough that there was always usually it was a dude, but it was a dude who did InfoSec. Somebody made up a marketing title, called it Cybersecurity, but it's been around and with us since the first digital information practices started.
Right.
So it's a gift. It's a gift, but you have to open a gift.
Yes.
You have to use what's inside the gift in order to optimize its potential.
Love that. I think a lot of people could learn from you on how to be a great advocate for others. It sounds like you have a lot of friends. When I first saw Kirsten walk in, she was only worried about one thing. She was worried about you. She was like, I have to make sure my friend is taken care of. And then I met a few people and they said that they came here for the keynote. They wanted to see you speak. So I think that's a very strong pull that you have on the community. You're showing a lot of love, obviously. What advice would you have for someone that has a lot of knowledge, but they haven't really stepped into the role of a mentor or really as a leader as well?
Leadership, particularly in this day and age, we have 3 generations now in the workforce that are younger than me. They all approach things in a different way, right? We were a hierarchical, tops down kind of, I'm a baby boomer. That's my generation. And I think we have generations now that are teaching us how to be collaborative and how to lead in a different manner. And that leadership is moving more from, good Lord, we shouldn't be telling to some degree. There are moments where you have to tell, right? At some point you all come together, you say, guys, we're flying northeast. Do you want to go southwest? It's been a pleasure. Feel free to go.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
But if you don't lead collaboratively and you don't figure out a way, I have a son who is a millennial, and he thinks very differently than I do. And that's a special gift that I can learn from. Sometimes it's not a gift, but that's the mother-child relationship. We challenge one another, and he's brilliant in a different area. He's a polymer chemist. And I think that the combination of leadership by collaboration and pulling in is something that we ought to embrace and stop telling people that their trajectory in life needs to be upward and to the right on the graph. The true leader is one who understands, I'm going to take a leap and I'm going to go into a new area. I'm going to learn something. Or if you love what you do, stay in that and then optimize it for a special reason or for a special purpose or for a special research. But make that decision while keeping an open mind and scanning 360 degrees at all times, because something, if you forget to scan, that you would have loved can be missed. So I'm going to challenge leadership. And people like, how can I become a C-level executive? I'm like, not by worrying about how to become a C-level executive. That's how you can do it.
If you told me that, I'd be like, okay, I'll stop doing that. And then what?
And then the answer is figure out what are the 5 or 6 things that you know about that are great. And what are the 22 things that you don't know about that you might want to know about? And let people know that you're interested in learning more. And that's hard. I am great one-on-one. Hopefully I'm fairly decent on the stage. I am horrible in a social setting, and people are always amazed at that. Somebody asked me, I was interviewed by the Wall Street Journal, and this will always stay with me and made me very cautious about journalists in general. These were great journalists, and it was a great article. It was a select group of security leaders on a specific set of issues. And he threw in a question at the end, which was, what are your hobbies? And the article, and I suffer from chronic transparency.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, I eat when I can. And the article came out and there were references there were three of us who were interviewed. One person was a phenomenal, world-class athlete. Another person was a poet. I'm not kidding you. They wrote haikus. And then it said, and Edna Conway eats when she can. I was
like, that's not exactly what I wanted.
Perhaps I need to look around 360 degrees. I might have become a little myopic here. Eh?
Yes.
So we all have opportunities to lead in a different way.
Yeah.
We're at a pivotal time right now in this country and in the world. Step up. Tell people what you think and be open to listening to other people's ideas.
Yeah. I think it's a lot of times it's not about the destination, it's about the journey and, what you experience along the way. Edna, I wanted to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking some time out of your busy day and conference to speak with us on the podcast. For anyone that hasn't already connected or followed Edna, be sure to check out the show notes or description wherever you're listening or watching, and we will see everyone next time.